Devin caught 40, 35-yard line, 25-20, burning Devin Key, 10-5, touchdown, San Francisco. Trent Sherfield.
Oh, baby, August 14th, 2021. Trey Lance throws a 75-yard dive to Trent Sherfield, and boy, we thought it was the start of something special. We thought we were beginning the Trey Lance era. We thought we were entering the Trey Lance era. We thought number 5, Trey Lance, was taking his franchise into the future to lead them to multiple Super Bowls and so on and so forth. But it wasn't the case because last Friday, the Trey Lance era was over. It ended.
Did it ever begin?
It didn't begin, really. It didn't really begin as the Niners part ways with Trey Lance to the Dallas Cowboys for a fourth-round pick. And you know what we're going to talk about all day, plus some other things. There is other things with the 49ers, but a lot of this conversation is today is going to be about Shanahan, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, John Lynch. And there's just so many questions here. There's a bevy of questions we'll ask today. 888-957-9570. And I guess the first question is, will the Niners ever come to regret this? Did they make a mistake by drafting Trey Lance? Obviously, they did. Did you lose respect for Kyle Shanahan? Did you lose respect for John Lynch? We're going to get into all that here on the Morning Roast as we say good morning to everybody out there getting off their graveyard shift. If you're at work, what is happening? If you're getting ready for work, what is happening? Drive safely. Good morning to YouTube, Twitch, powered by First NorCal Credit Union, and, of course, the Xfinity Mobile Text Line. Good morning to Spadoni. We got Sam Lubman back in the saddle, and we got you, Joe Shasky. You get the first crack at this. Trey Lance, we barely know him. And now he's in Texas.
I think it's best for all parties that he's not on the team anymore. I think it's best for him. You know, he needed to move on. But I think if you're worried about the Niners, you just got to clear all the distractions and all the questions and all the fluff and the worrying and the hand-wringing about someone who wasn't, scheduled to play much this year, if at all, unless things went horribly wrong. So I think they had to do this. I'm a little surprised they didn't do this at the draft, quite honestly. Maybe the timing wasn't right. Maybe you don't get, this high of a pick. The pick is almost irrelevant at this point. Honest to God, maybe the 4th-round pick turns into a guard or something down the line. I don't know. But the pick is almost irrelevant. In terms of what they gave up, and if we just close the book on that, it's one of the worst trades in any sport in terms of just straight value. Giving up multiple firsts, a third for 13 quarters of play, and then swapping a fourth 3 years later. I mean, it's just horrible. But really, I come back to these two numbers: 23-11, and then the other set of numbers is 4-2. And what is that? That is the 49ers record since Trey Lance has been drafted. They are 23-11 in the regular season, and they are 4-2 in the playoffs. So if I reverse those numbers and I was 11 of 23 with no playoff appearances, we would have some major problems, right? But because they're 23-11 in the regular season and because they're 4-2 in the playoffs, they can overcome this. Yeah. And I feel like to some degree they already have. Now, they're going to be judged moving forward. But at the end of the day, as long as they continue to win, it's almost impossible to be that upset. If you're a Niner fan, I understand, being disappointed and frustrated that maybe you didn't get a chance to see something, but don't you want to win?
And that's what it's about. And they're in a position to win, as we'll talk about it here on a Monster Monday. Brought to you by First 5 California. To learn 4 things you can do to overcome toxic stress, go to first5california.com. And you have overcome this bad trade. They've overcome multiple bad draft picks. They've overcome bad trades. Some people say the D4 trade was a bad one for the 49ers due to the health. They took a swing. He was healthy for half the season. His back didn't hold up, and you move on. It didn't kill you in the end, right? It didn't. It really didn't.
D Ford?
It really didn't. Not in 2019, he helped you.
I'm glad
2020, he gets hurt, but a lot of guys got hurt in 2020. This Trey Lance deal, whether or not there's a lot to the Trey Lance situation. You're right about the 23-11. You're right about the 4-2. And you know what? They found a guy who they believe in a lot more, and I understand why they believe in him, in Brock Purdy, because the offense just looked different. We talk about user-friendly quarterbacks, right? User-friendly quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But when Nick Willis came in, this offense didn't move. Where C.J. Beathard came in, this offense didn't move. It looked concentrated.
With Mullins, it moved, but there were lots of turnovers.
Yeah, it moved backwards. It moved for the other offense.
There were lots of turnovers.
You know what it did? It moved the light bulbs on the scoreboard for the other team. You know what I'm saying? It added more points to their scoreboard. You got blown out half the time with Nick Mullins. Jimmy Garoppolo at times couldn't move the football with this offense. It looked constipated at times. There's no doubt. This offense looks very, very different with Brock Purdy. And they fell in love with that. Did they get lucky? Absolutely. They got lucky with that.
Yeah.
And they were able to overcome it. The great franchises, here's the thing, and I keep saying this, and I said it all last week. The great franchises find ways to cut bait, move on, and keep it moving and don't look back. And that's what the Niners are doing right now. Did they want to keep Trey Lance? Absolutely. Trey Lance, God bless his soul, was like, I need a new beginning. And I don't blame him. The Niners, you know what? It's probably better to move on from Trey Lance because the minute Brock Purdy struggles, everybody's going to be calling for Trey Lance, and they probably retired of that noise. Even though that locker room, I think, is strong, and that locker room doesn't let a lot of noise get to them. Because obviously, there's been so many situations in the last 4 years where this locker room could have broke, and it hasn't.
I'm exhausted on the Trey Lance talking and the narrative. So I'm absolutely sure the players are exhausted. And honestly, I just think in certain situations, this breakup is probably best for all parties. Right? If we're being honest.
No, it is.
It was toxic at this point. You brought up the D4 trade. I'm glad you kind of brought that trade up. On one level, this regime has had a couple of bad trades. You referenced D Ford. I would say D Ford had some good in it.
Yeah.
I would say even the Buckner trade, which was a bad trade. Like, we're just on its surface level. Bad trade. There was some good because you retained Eric Armstead, you retained Jimmy Ward, right? Like, it made some sense. It's a bad trade, though. Like, I'm not denying it. They've also created 3 of the better trades in the last 15 years for the Niners. Emmanuel Sanders was a great trade,
Jimmy Garoppolo was a very good trade.
Jimmy Garoppolo was an unbelievable trade. How about Christian McCaffrey? How about Trent Williams? So, yes, there are some bad trades on the blood of the hands, or in the hands, of this regime. There's also some really good trades. So it's hard to, I get it. You want to crush them because this was probably, in terms of draft ammunition, it was monumental.
This was this is one of the worst draft day trades in NFL history.
Yeah, but
there's been a lot of bad trades too. No doubt.
But you also acquired one of the best players in the NFL.
Right. No
I'm
doubt.
talking about Christian McCaffrey.
No doubt.
You also acquired maybe the best offensive lineman outside of Bob St. Clair in your franchise history in Trent Williams. And you just had Joe Staley. Right. So I have a hard time, I've got to be on the. You're kind of not seeing the full picture here.
Right.
If you're losing your mind about this one thing.
Now, the 49ers, you think about the first trade they ever made together with Shanahan and Lynch, was in the NFL draft in 2017 when they moved down from 2 to 3. Well, was it a bad one? Think about this deal that they made. So they swap picks with the Bears. Bears move up from 3 to 2. Niners go from 2 to 3. And a third rounder, of course, they trade to the Bears. The Niners get back a third-round pick in 2018, right? The 2018 third-round pick, you know who that turned into? It turned into Fred Warner. And he's now one of the best linebackers in football. So even that trade, you don't get the quarterback. You take Solomon Thomas, but on the flip side, you receive that third-round pick and you turn it into Fred Warner. So they've made some good trades. They made some neutral trades. They made some bad trades. This Trey Lance deal was a bad one. And listen to Shanahan after the game. Now, and I guess I'll start there.
No,
how much respect?
Well, this trade in a vacuum, before you move, it was awful. I don't think you can defend it.
No, you can't defend it.
It was awful.
The trade was awful.
But they can overcome it. It was
awful.
They
already have overcome it.
Yes.
They already have overcome it.
Well, I think moving forward as well, they have to keep winning.
Well, they have to keep winning. But at the same time, if they don't win this year, they're going to go into next year saying, we only have Brock Purdy under contract. That's the only quarterback under contract.
I don't even want to get
to next year. And they can make more moves at the quarterback spot next year. They have quarterback flexibility.
But I don't even want to go that far.
We're not going there yet. We got week 1 Pittsburgh coming up. We're not doing that. But in terms of Kyle Shanahan, because I've gotten a lot of this over the weekend.
What's that?
Oh, I've lost a lot of respect for Shanahan. Oh, I don't think Shanahan. A lot of people call Shanahan a liar. I've been one of the harshest critics of Kyle Shanahan at the station in this market, to the point where some people thought it was maybe personal, and it was not. Because a lot of people held Shanahan to the standard, oh, he's a genius, blah, blah, blah. Well, I saw a genius in Bill Walsh. And I think George Seifert wasn't that bad as a head coach of the 49ers and a longtime defensive coordinator. Shanahan, I'll hold him to the highest of highest standards. The highest of highest standards, because I think he's that damn good. But for me, Friday, after the game, to hear him answer those questions and stick there and say, I let Trey down. I let Trey down. Me personally, I thought Shanahan grew up that night, and I actually gained a lot of respect for Kyle Shanahan for taking the bullets right then and there. I don't care whether or not he spoke Wednesday night and just left off the practice field. Some people called him cowardly. I know some of the beat writers are mad because he went on radio first and they didn't get the first crack at it. I don't care. Honestly, I knew he was going to speak at one point, and he spoke Friday night. And I gained a lot more respect for Shanahan for going up there and owning it. I know a lot of people say, I don't want to believe anything he says on the podium. I thought Friday, he showed some vulnerability. He let his guard down, and he said it. I let Trey down. I don't know how many NFL head coaches will be that forthcoming in explaining a situation like the one they were just in of trading all those picks for a future quarterback that played 4.5 games. Like, seriously. Like, I thought Shanahan, I thought it was one of his finest moments. I swear to God.
But what did you expect him to say? Like, the player's just not good enough? Like,
no. How many coaches would go through detail?
He has to.
But no, he doesn't.
I mean,
no, he doesn't. You think Bill Belichick would do that?
Well, no.
You think Andy Reid would do that?
Belichick never made a trade like this.
How many coaches would explain the process of moving on from Trey, letting them know how he was benched, how the meeting went? I don't think you understand. Like, how many coaches would sit up there?
Steve Kerr and Bob Myers, right, with James Wiseman, had to sit there and basically, hey, like development. Like, they went through the entire process of why James Wiseman.
That's what makes him special.
Yes.
How many coaches and franchises do that? There's not many that do that.
I mean, if you want to be one of the successful ones, you have to. And I would say to you, most other
Pacers
situations
don't do it.
But I'd say most other situations, when you whiff this big, you're not 23-11, and you're not still employed. Most of them are out the door, right, with the quarterback. So I think this is a unique situation, just altogether. I don't know. I expected him to accept some culpability because I watched John Lynch an hour prior, basically say, "Hey, hold us accountable." And I think it's not easy, but I think it's saying hold us accountable while you have Brock Purdy. It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to do that.
Well, see,
if they didn't have an answer at quarterback, I think it would have been more difficult to be able to be so. But
they do have that answer at quarterback, and even when teams have answers at quarterbacks, I don't think I've been in a lot of press conferences in my life, a lot of coaching pressers, a lot of GM pressers, and whether it's here or elsewhere, just at all levels. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've heard that many coaches or that many GMs have to explain a situation like Bob Myers and Steve Kerr. That's what makes them exceptional, because they do go through detail, and they do try to get everybody on the same page, and they do try to say, hey, look, we made this mistake. This is why we thought this. This is why we moved on. This is why we made the trade. A lot of football teams kind of just sweep it under the rug, say, yeah, we made the deal. We thought it was best for the team, and they give you general blanket statements that are empty. I thought Shanahan Friday night, taking us down that rabbit hole of what went down with Trey, how we let Trey down, what happened with the finger, talking about his raw ability, talking about the lack of reps, talking about Brock Purdy coming along, talking about how the development and the chance and all. I thought it was fascinating from Kyle Shanahan. That's just me. 888-957-9570. I know a lot of people agree, but I would like to hear from people about Shanahan holding that pressure. It's something we're going to replay in the 7 o'clock hour.
I don't know. I just, in terms of being at a podium or whatever, where I stand on podium talk. Like, I don't take anybody at face value anymore. It's about your actions and what you do moving forward. So if you're impressed, I'm not saying I'm hating on him or anything like that. It's whatever to me. Like, you got to win. Like, to me, it's all talk. You got to just keep winning. And then what you do end up, relationship wise with Brock Purdy or whether it's Sam Darnold down the line, I think that's the part that matters. Like, how are you and your quarterback getting along this year? Yeah, I think that's kind of how I'm going to judge the situation.
You don't think he got along with Trey Lance? You don't think he gets along
I'm just
with
going
Brock
more
Purdy?
Jimmy. I just think the whole Jimmy thing, to me, like the Trey Lance thing, Trey just might not be good enough. Trey just might not be good enough. And I think that's a different question.
To hear them rip that Band-Aid off and say, you know what? We blew it, and we hold ourselves accountable. Isn't that what fans want? Like, don't you want your GM, the coach, to come out and say, see, I'm trying to figure out what the fans want. Because one minute, when they don't tell us anything, you're like, they need to go out there and speak. They need to go out there and speak. They need to explain themselves. And to hear them, like, because Wednesday, for example, when they told Trey Lance, you're number 3, Darnold's number 2, how many people raise their arms and call the Niners cowards for not coming out and speaking? So when they finally do, and they finally say, you know what? We're accountable.
But wait a minute.
We let them down.
Wait a minute.
What do you mean, wait a minute?
You don't, like, this is the Chris Rock. You don't get, like, extra praise for paying child support. Like, that's what you're supposed to do.
No,
and in this situation, one second.
You don't have to do that.
What?
You don't have to go up there and explain anything to the fan base.
Yeah, you do.
No, you don't.
You just made a trade of the guy that you moved a bunch of picks for.
All you have to
so
do
what are
is
you going to say? You're not going to talk about it?
No, all you have to do is go up there and say, hey, we traded Trey Lance. It was best for both parties. And you don't have to go into detail. You don't have to go into detail and tell anybody.
I would say to you
Bill
that
Belichick certainly does it. Andy Reid does it. A lot of these coaches don't. They don't go into detail.
No one's had a trade go as bad for them as this one. So
Belichick's had some terrible trades.
What?
Belichick has had some bad trades.
Well, yeah, but he also has 6 championships.
Right, but you had bad trades.
He's had a winning season every single year except last year. So I mean, he has 20 years of track record. It's just different. Look, it's fine, like whatever. But I would say to you, like, we're acting like they did something noble. He did a post-game press conference where he took maybe 9 minutes of questions about Trey Lance, who was his pick. It would be different if it was a Wednesday, middle of the week. There wasn't a game because they sprinkled in some questions about the game. Not many, but they sprinkled in those. They also have the Bosa thing hanging over. I don't know. I didn't think it was some noble thing that they took questions on Trey Lance. That's what you're supposed to do when you trade away someone that you moved 3 picks to go get.
But how many times have you watched these pressers where they don't say anything and they don't go into detail? You don't have to do that. There's no law saying, hey, I need to explain why I traded this guy or the details of why I traded this guy to anybody. They don't owe that to anybody.
Oh,
really
I guess my thing is, like, I don't care if he's contrite. I don't care if he, whatever. All it really matters is, like, win games.
Okay.
I think that's kind of my setting. And I'm not dismissing what because I think a lot of people do care about what the coach says. And at this point, I really don't. Like, just win games, be ready for week 1 against the Steelers, be 23-11, go 4-2 in the playoffs like you have since you drafted Trey Lance, and all the Trey stuff will just go away.
So now your setting is Super Bowl or bust now.
I wouldn't say Super Bowl bust.
That's where
you got to win a lot. You got to win a lot. Just keep winning.
Haven't they done that?
Oh, yeah.
Haven't they done that?
Yeah. But I don't think that you're wrong. I do think a lot of people care about, like, them at a podium. I don't, though, anymore. I really don't.
Well, but that's funny because the other day you were talking about podium games and how people carry themselves out of podium. And I'm like, really? So I'm confused by the fan base here. I'm a little confused.
He did a post game after a preseason game. Had 3 days to prepare and had 3 days to prepare. Like, I didn't think it was something like, oh my God, get this man a Nobel Peace Prize.
I thought Shanahan was contrite. I was like, wow, I can't believe.
Well, who else's fault is
Shanahan,
it? Wait, time out. Who else's fault is it?
Hold on. How many times do we listen to Shanahan saying, damn, he's a snarky SOB?
No, he is.
Damn,
But even at the end of that press conference, he got snarky.
Yeah, he did. Because the guy was asking a dumb question.
Like, at some point, like, who else is supposed to fall on the sword? It's on John Lynch and Kyle.
No, but to hear him say, I let Trey down. And the tone of it, it's the tone. It's just like our tone when it comes to radio, right? We could be loud. We could be angry. Some people think we're mad. His tone, I thought, was the right tone.
Okay.
And it felt sincere. I don't know. That's as sincere as I've heard Shanahan. So that's just me. 888-957-9570.
I think a lot of people feel your way.
No, there's a lot of people who think he was lying. There's a lot of people who think John Lynch was lying. I saw some people saying Kyle Juszczyk was lying. Like the whole thing about Kyle sabotaging Trey Lance. That is, like,
but
to me, at the end of the day.
This is why he's gone. Like what you just said. So there's like 4. This is why he's gone. You can't have this guy as QB3 with all of this. Juszczyk's lying. This guy didn't say this.
But again,
this is why he's gone.
But that's to me, that's the fans. And to me in that locker room, Trey Lance has to be out. Trey Lance said, you know what? It's probably best if you guys could do me a solid.
It is best that he's gone.
If you could do me a solid and look for a trade, let's do that. That was on Trey Lance. The Niners, from what I hear, they had no problem with him being QB3. But we'll see. Now he's QB3 in Dallas. And again, Trey Lance is not going to play in Dallas.
No, but I think it's good to remove just all the chatter. Like all the chatter. Aren't we exhausted? He wasn't going to play. Aren't we exhausted? Like, and no one is sitting here saying that Brandon Allen's a better football player than Trey Lance. But, like, no one's going to talk about Brandon Allen. You're not going to interview the guards and the backup cornerbacks about the quarterback who's not playing. They just needed to remove this. Okay, yeah, you save $5 million. Like the money I get, I guess there's some sort of value to the money down the line. I'd argue now you can get 2 Isaiah Olivers who stink for the price of 1 Trey Lance next year. But like at the end of the day, win games. I'm worried about trying to win, because they got to win this division and they got to try to win a Super Bowl. That's what we all want to do.